to the True Freshman Podcast. These are your favorite sophomores, even though it's called the True Freshman Podcast. We're going to keep the name because we like it. And I'm all here alongside Zach Gershman. Zach, how are you doing today?
My favorite other sophomore, Austin Groft. How are you today? I'm great. I'm so excited. You know, these are crazy times, but the one thing that stays for sure is the True Freshman Podcast featuring your favorite sophomores.
For sure. I'm so excited to get back into it. College football is back, but unfortunately there's no Penn State football because there's no Big Ten football. But we still have 3 of the 5 Power 5 conferences playing. The ACC, the SEC, Big 12 are still having their seasons. And alongside the Big Ten, the Pac-12 decided to cancel their season. So let's get right into it. So is it crucial? It's crucial for teams to continue the season, obviously, by taking the proper precautions, by teams staying safe, being smart, following the procedures. But do you see this season at all being canceled midway through? We've seen a lot of postponements with games already. We'll go through the games that have been postponed already. We've seen, I think it was Texas maybe. I don't know what team. No, it was Tennessee, I believe, had 44 players out, and they had to cancel practice. So, Zach, what is your take on the college football season this year?
On the college football season, I think it'll start out pretty hot, but cases are going to arise. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. We see it here on Penn State's campus. Even though Pennsylvania State University is doing a great job overall trying to contain the coronavirus, unfortunately, the coronavirus is not a Penn State football fan or a college football fan, so it's not stopping for anybody. Overall, I really hope that there's a college football season. For the sake of these universities, for the sake of these student athletes, I really hope that there will be a season and at least a full season. But as you said, some players on certain universities, big universities as well, Tennessee's a big football school, the season is going to be cut short for some of these schools, and it's obviously unfortunate. But it's the name of the game and it's life, and unfortunately things are not fair. Overall, though, I think there will be a season. It will just be cut short.
Yeah, and looking at some of the big games that have been canceled already, NC State and Virginia Tech postponed in their opener. TCU and SMU postponed their game. And then we saw Temple versus Navy is also postponed, and Baylor versus Louisiana Tech. Those are among some of the bigger games that have been postponed.
Yeah, I was actually really interested to see the Baylor game because it's going to be the first year that they don't have Matt Rule as head coach, the new Carolina Panthers head coach. I was really interested to see how the team out of Waco, Texas was going to do, but we'll have to wait a little bit for that to happen.
And then we'll talk about Penn State news now. One of the big ones from this week is Pat Freiermuth now has opted out of the season to declare for the NFL draft. But what is the big reason? What gives the players a reason to opt out of the season?
Money.
Exactly.
Money. Without a doubt, if there's anything I've learned taking our Com 170 class with Mike Portman, the answer to everything in college is money. It's the be-all, end-all, as they say. And Pat Freiermuth is going to be a first-round, second-round pick. Maybe with him opting out, his draft stock might go down a little bit because he won't have a junior year to play. But overall, the answer is money. He's going to be a top 2-round pick, and he's going to be dominant in the league. He will get his check real quick. I understand the decision. As a Penn State fan and as a fan of college football, I would have loved to see him play for another season. Overall, though, it's the money is what calls. I mean, we saw Michael Parsons opt out earlier on in the year, and the reason he cited was for the safety of his child. And these kids have families, they have lives. I obviously understand it all. As a fan, though, I wish they would have stayed. But best of luck to Pat. We've seen him on the field, we've seen him off the field. His family is the one who's been running this Big Ten union to contact Commissioner Warren. And the We Want to Play movement, his family's behind that. Seems like a good kid, seems like a good family, and I wish him all the best.
I know this is just a college football podcast, but we do go to Penn State, so we're going to touch some more Penn State stuff. But do you see Penn State basketball, wrestling, hockey, all the big winter sports, do you see them resuming on time, on a reasonable timetable?
Well, they just announced, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe they announced earlier today that hockey is going to be postponed a little bit. I hope they play. I hope hockey and basketball are Penn State's big revenue teams. They're the ones that bring in some of the most money outside of football. They're the ones that bring money to Penn State. I hope they play, but it would not surprise me if they don't.
Yeah, for sure. And let's continue along here. The only other big news I have for college football in general was Notre Dame's now in the ACC, which is going to give Clemson some pressure, but we'll talk about that when we look at predictions for this week and such. But that's probably, in my opinion, one of the biggest pieces of information, especially since Notre Dame they were independent. They weren't in any conference, but now they're going to, actually, they might also have an easier schedule joining the ACC than what they have had in the past.
That's how Notre Dame has always that's how they were always different than everyone else. That's how they differentiated themselves. They picked their own games. They weren't attached to a conference. They were in the independent conference, and they were able to do what they want. Now, as you said, they start off the season today against Duke, a team they beat last year, I believe it was 38-7.
Yep.
Austin is Mr. Statistician. Yeah. But they, as you already said, they're gonna add pressure to the Clemson Tigers. They're the number one team right now in the AP poll. It's gonna be interesting to see if Notre Dame playing them later on in the season. It'll be interesting to see how that'll shape the college football playoffs, because right now Notre Dame is ranked number 10, but they are a contender without the Big Ten and the Pac-12. They are now a contender to be in the top 4 spots for the college football playoffs. So really excited to see how the season pans out for them.
So let's get into this week's games already, and we'll go over kind of the rankings and such. But last week was technically week 1. This week is like week 2, but week 1 for Power 5 schools. We see that ACC is playing this weekend, and there's some Big 12 schools playing. The SEC won't play until next weekend, but the first big game we saw was Navy versus BYU, and actually they got blown out by BYU. That was a crazy game. But other than that, I'm sure we'll see wild games where crazy things are happening, since it's just such a weird season.
This is the season to expect the unexpected. And this is when you're going to see the upsets, no crowds, no fans. For some of these teams, that's why they start off their season, like for Texas. Really big athletic program, really big football program. They're playing UTEP. They were supposed to. I'm not sure if the game was postponed or not. I saw reports about their potential for the game to be postponed. But these stadiums, especially let's say for a Penn State, the crowd is the 12th man on the team for them. I know Seattle has the 12th man as their sign, but for these college football teams, their student section, their fans are everything. They really are the 12th man. Now, that aspect of the game is completely taken away.
So let's look into the AP top 10 includes some Big Ten teams and an Pac-12 team, but I'm still going to go through it, and then I'll go over ESPN's power rankings. So the AP top 10 was Clemson at 1, Ohio State at 2, Alabama 3, Georgia 4, Oklahoma 5, LSU 6, Penn State 7, Florida 8, Oregon 9, and 10 Notre Dame. The power rankings, this is not AP, this is just ESPN's power rankings. They got Alabama at 1, Clemson 2, Georgia 3, Florida 4, Notre Dame 5, Oklahoma 6, LSU 7, Texas A&M 8, Texas 9, and Auburn 10. And those are just teams that are actually playing this fall.
No comment there. It's gonna be a really competitive. This is when we're gonna see who the real dominant conference is. With the SEC, one of the things the SEC got a lot of flack for over the past couple of years is that they play a lot of non-conference games, where the competition is very less than subpar. And it's going to be the first year that the SEC is really going to be able to show a solid, however many amount of games they could play. This is going to show what real competition looks like in the SEC.
So I'm just going to ask you right off the bat here, who do you think is going to win the college football playoff this year and take home the championship?
I want to say Clemson. I think Trevor Lawrence, with it being his last year, I think he's going to really, for lack of a better term, he's really going to pop off, and he's going to play like it's his last year in his last games, because it could be. Any game could be his last game in college football right now. So I want to say Clemson. They didn't make it to the championship last year. LSU took that. I'm excited for it. I think Clemson's going to do it.
That's also my pick. I have Clemson to win it all, and I also, alongside that, have Trevor Lawrence winning the Heisman. I'm big on them this year. He's so experienced now, having played in 2 college football championships in his 2 seasons at Clemson.
Yeah, I messed up there. LSU, my bad for the microphone. I did mess up there. LSU did play Clemson in the national championship. That's my fault there.
And then their roster is just so stacked. And I feel like they have the experience. All the pieces are there. I just feel like it's this year. A notable stat, too, last year was the first year a team not named Clemson or Alabama won the national championship since 2014 when Ohio State won it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Which just means, like, I feel like Clemson definitely has what it takes. And last year, Alabama actually missed out on the playoffs. So
they did. They
so
did.
they're
They were the
definitely
5 seed, and they played Michigan in the bowl game.
They're going to be coming out this year ready to play, especially barely just missing out of the playoffs.
Now they don't have to worry about Ohio State taking that 4th
Exactly.
spot or Penn State for that matter, just because we're biased here. They don't have to worry about another Big Ten team or a Pac-12 team fighting for that number 4 spot. It's really theirs it's theirs to lose.
And like you were saying along Notre Dame, they have a chance to sneak into the college football playoff with an easy schedule. The only team really that they should lose to this year is Clemson.
Yeah, and I with Notre Dame's offense this year more than any, there's no excuses. You got your starting quarterback in Ian Book, 3rd-year grad student. He set the record last year for Notre Dame in 5 games with 4 touchdowns, at least 4 touchdowns in those 5 straight games. And the whole offensive line returns. What's your excuse? Notre Dame should really take a huge leap in the ACC, and that could potentially also punch their ticket to the college football playoffs.
And then the other notable team that should make the college football playoff is Oklahoma, but they have yet to win a college football playoff game, and they almost make it like every year, which is crazy to think about.
See, I don't think that they're going to – I don't know if they'll make it to the college football playoffs this year.
But we can both agree that they should win the Big 12.
They should.
Yeah.
They should. I mean, Oklahoma State's all right. You got their running back.
Chuba,
the Chuba train. You got Chuba. You got Coach Gundy out there at Oklahoma State. They're ranked number 15 right now in the AP. They're also a really good team, and it's also that Oklahoma rivalry. Oklahoma University should win the Big 12, but I expect a fight from both Texas and from Oklahoma State.
So that pretty much wraps up basically the college football championship team there. But the last thing we have to go over today is the games of the week. Now, I made notes on 2 games. There are, I think, like 6 or there's 7 ranked teams playing this weekend. There's actually a game tonight. It is Miami's playing tonight for the ACC. I'm
really just sorry to jump in front of you, Austin, but this is Miami. Quarterback Tate Martell transferred to Miami thinking he was going to get that starting spot after sitting at Ohio State. He thought he was going to pull Justin Fields and transfer over to a new school and was going to take the starting spot. Lost it to Derek King, who's now their new starting quarterback. I'm interested to see how this Miami team plays under second-year head coach Manny Diaz. It should be they should wipe UAB off the map. UAB was off the map for a couple years without a football team. They should do it again, but it really is up to the quarterback play.
For sure. So the first game I want to talk about, we touched on it briefly. It's the Notre Dame Duke game. I think Notre Dame will demolish them. They won the last year, like we said, 38-7, and it's going to be the same problem that Duke had last time. They just won't be able to contain Ian Book in that offensive line.
Oh, 100%. And the game's also in South Bend. It's at Notre Dame. As we've already mentioned, we touched a little bit on it in the beginning, is that the lack of fans, you lose that home field advantage. But when you're playing in South Bend, I mean, the weather, it's not like the weather's bad there right now, but Notre Dame should have the advantage, having not traveled during this time.
And then the other big game that I think is probably going to be the most entertaining game out of all these ranked games is Louisiana versus Iowa State. Just because of their talented quarterbacks, it's going to be a very entertaining game to watch in Levi Lewis and Brock Purdy. Both talented quarterbacks. And last year, there was only 4 quarterbacks from last season that are returning to this season who threw for 3,000 yards, 25 touchdowns, and fewer than 10 picks, and that's Brock Purdy and Levi Lewis. And the other 2 quarterbacks to do that were Trevor Lawrence and Sam Ehlinger. So it's going to be a very entertaining game to watch from a QB perspective.
Brock Purdy from Iowa State, the Cyclones, number 23 Cyclones. Brock Purdy really has the chance to make it big in the NFL even. I saw a lot of reports around a lot of draft hype around him for the 2021 draft. He should play really well. The Ragin' Cajuns of Louisiana Lafayette are a pretty solid team with a good quarterback, as you have already mentioned. I just want to see if Brock Purdy could pick apart that Ragin' Cajun defense.
And then the game day, college game day of the week. It's going to be interesting to see how ESPN does college game day.
They're doing it virtually. They have fans in the background with those fake signs. Should be interesting. You definitely lose the hype around campus, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. 2020.
And that game is Clemson versus Wake Forest. Clemson opens up as 33-point favorites, so big favorites. But, Zach, what are your thoughts on this game?
I mean, I don't know how you could give Wake Forest a chance.
Yeah.
Wake Forest was 8-5 last year. I don't remember how they did in their bowl game. But Clemson's Clemson. And you got Dabo, you got Trevor Lawrence, you got majority of their players coming back. They won vengeance after losing last year to LSU. Even though LSU was the presumptive favorite, as the true freshman podcast listeners know, I was always a big Joe Burrow LSU fan throughout the year. And
he called it Joe Burrow for Heisman.
And it did happen. I'm very happy for Joe that it did happen. I'm really happy for myself because it's given me a lot of clout. But that Clemson team is coming back with they want some vengeance. They lost last year and they want to add another ring to their collection.
And then you said you wanted to talk about the UNC Syracuse game, right?
UNC Syracuse, it's going to be a really exciting ACC matchup. North Carolina is number 18 in the country. They haven't been ranked that high in the past couple years. I'm excited to see if Dino Babers and his Syracuse Orange team could attack and upset them, being unranked themselves. But I think UNC will go away with the win.
And then the other two games there's like three. Oklahoma's playing Missouri State.
Well, Oklahoma, we touched a little bit on Oklahoma in the beginning as to how they would perform in the college football playoffs. But bold prediction right here: Heisman runner-up is going to be Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler is a redshirt freshman, redshirt freshman quarterback, learned last year under Jalen Hurts, who was a Heisman finalist himself for the past 2 seasons. One being at Alabama, one being at Oklahoma, now the new backup quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. Spencer Rattler had the opportunity to learn under one of college football's greatest quarterbacks in Jalen Hurts. He had a lot of hype in the beginning, from all the way back from his high school football days. The QB1 Netflix series was surrounded around him and his progression from when he went to school in Arizona, I believe it was, to his transition in Oklahoma. I think Spencer Rattler is the most intriguing player in college football this year and will be the runner-up in the Heisman Trophy finalists.
Bold prediction, but you already know Zach. He's go with those Heisman picks.
Trevor Lawrence will win the Heisman. There it is.
Yeah, I also agree with that. I think Trevor Lawrence, this is his year, 3rd year. He's had amazing freshman year and amazing sophomore year. And the pieces are there, like I said. It's bound to happen. And then the 2 other games that we didn't mention are UTEP in Texas, and then Ford International versus UFC, but those games should both be blowouts, so there's nothing really to talk about there. So I believe that pretty much wraps up the True Freshman podcast from your favorite sophomores. Zach, you want to say anything else here before we wrap things up?
I'm definitely excited to be back in the studio. We're excited to bring back, to the best of our ability, being students, we also have restrictions on what we're allowed and what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. Very thankful for the Penn State Sports Night crew for allowing us that opportunity to get in the studio and talk about what we love, being your favorite sophomores, talking on the Freshman Podcast about college football. Hopefully there's a season that we could continue to talk about. But thank you, Austin, and thank you to the listeners.
Yeah, and shout out to Hunter Pickoff for everything he does for Penn State Sports Nights. One of my favorite executive producers. He does it all.
The absolute man.
All right. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening. This is the True Freshman Podcast from your favorite sophomores. Stay tuned for next week. We'll be giving you guys an episode every week, and enjoy some college football this weekend.
We out.
Thank you for watching our latest edition of Penn State Sports Night. If you're a fan of our content, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more clips. Also follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with the action. For all my colleagues, we are Penn State Sports Night.